Hey, y'all, little drummer boy, and today I'm going to do a video. It's a book review of I Am Brian Wilson, the autobiography of the genius behind the Beach Boys, Brian Douglas Wilson. And I've tried to shoot this one about 2 or 3 times, but I've had trouble getting it to upload to Facebook for some reason. I'm thinking maybe because the picture's copyrighted or something. So I'm probably not going to show the cover in the video, but I will put the cover on the thumbnail. So when you look at it, it should have the cover of the book on it. But anyway, this book is awesome, y'all. Brian is very candid about his life. As you know, Brian is the eccentric genius behind the Beach Boys, the best-selling American band of all time. My favorite band, the most perfect heavenly harmonies I've ever heard. The subject matter is surf, girls, and cars. And then later on, they invented psychedelic rock with good vibrations and pet sounds. But and like Sean Lennon, Julian and Yoko's son said, John and Yoko's son said, the Beach Boys are his favorite group, and he listens to them every day. And of course, they had a friendly rivalry with the Beatles, and they were each other's favorite groups. Paul McCartney said that God Only Knows is the most beautiful song he ever heard, and that Pet Sounds influenced the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Nights Club Band. And also, Brian Wilson is the only American that played at the Queen's Jubilee, I think. Him and Paul McCartney played together. And anyway, so let's look at some pictures here. Oh, but this book, let me tell you about the book first. It is so fascinating. If you like rock and roll, if you like history, if you like music, or if you just like a good biography, it's in here. And Brian is so funny. And as you know, he's got psychological problems, and he's had a lot of drug issues, but he's been clean for a lot of years now. And he's honest that he still likes to score beer every now and then, or a mixed drink, but he's been clean for a lot of years with the help of therapists and his present wife Melinda. And Brian Wilson is definitely a testament of God's amazing grace. So let's get into it. And he's so funny and honest. Like, he tells about one time and I didn't know this. The Beach Boys song Marcella was named after lady of the evening that he used to see at a massage parlor when he was not doing, in his best condition. But he's just brutally honest in this book, way more honest than I think a lot of rock stars would be. The first chapter is Royal Festival Hall, London, 2004. He jumps around here a lot. He'll talk about his brothers, his dad, who gave him his gift of music, but also he had an abusive relationship with his father. And so he jumps around. It's not in chronological order, but it's great. He pretty much covers everything. Fear, family, foundation, home, fathers and sons. That's about his dad and brothers. Dennis and Carl, who were also in the Beach Boys. Eka, and he's the only one that survived out of the three. Dennis was the drummer and the only one that really surfed and stuff. He lived the Beach Boys lifestyle. He was the quintessential California surfer dude. Dennis Wilson was. He was in the Charles Manson family. Stole a song from Charles Manson, "Never Learn Not to Love," which was a Manson song named "Cease to Exist." You can also see that on my YouTube channel. Just look up Beach Boys Manson song. But Dennis stole "Cease to Exist" from Manson and rewrote it, "Never Learn Not to Love" by the Beach Boys. And they didn't give Manson credit or any royalties. And honestly, that's what really set him off. And he came back to kill the Beach Boys later. He came to Dennis's house to kill him, but thankfully, and he was planning on killing all the Beach Boys, but thankfully they were on tour at the time. And by the time they came home from tour, he had already been arrested for the murders. And but anyway, Dennis drowned in 1983 of his addiction. He literally drowned drunk, and I think I read on cocaine and Valiums maybe. But he loved to mix screwdrivers and carried a screwdriver. And not a tool. Carried a screwdriver drink like everywhere he went. And so Dennis drowned drunk in 1983, and Carl died from lung cancer from smoking cigarettes. So Brian is the only Wilson brother surviving. And with the way, the drug abuse and obesity and alcoholism and unhealthy eating that he used to do, it's a miracle. He just turned 78 last June 20th, 2 days after his close friend Paul McCartney turned 78. Okay, we're moving right along. Fathers and Sons, Echoes and Voices, Sun, America, Time, and Today. Now let's go. As you can tell, I mark up all my books. I'm going to quit doing that, except on ones I lost where the pictures were. I'm going to have to quit marking up the books, though, because it takes too long to read them that way, and I've got thousands of books I need to read, and I need to get on with it, So I'm just going to start marking up like my devotional books and study books, and the rest of them I'm just going to read. But here's Brian with his grandfather in the 1940s, mid-40s, and their family, the Wilsons are Swedish, and their family hailed from Kansas and moved to California in, I think, maybe the 20s or 30s during the Dust Bowl and the Depression. And they camped on the beach at San Diego in horse and wagons. Isn't that cool? And I spent a month in San Diego, and I can tell you, if you got to be homeless, that's the place to be, because, it's 70 to 80 degrees all year round and no humidity, no bugs, and it hardly ever rains. Outside the Hawthorne house with Dennis and Carl in 1953. I couldn't hit the curve, Hawthorne in the 1950s. And Brian, their family is not only blessed with music, but Brian was the quarterback and the pitcher of the Hawthorne Cougars baseball and football teams. And his cousin Mike Love, who is the lead singer of the Beach Boys, his brother Stan Love played for the Atlanta Hawks NBA team, and his son, I think it's Stephen Love. Is it Stephen Love? My mind's just drawing a blank. I think it's Stephen Love. He plays for the Timberwolves, and that's Brian's second cousin. More ball with Dennis and Carl, Hawthorne in the 1950s. And there's Brian with this crew cut, school picture, school days. A school concert from very early in the band's career. This is when they wore their Pendleton shirts, which were like plaid shirts, and then later on they went to the purple and white stripes. Here's a philosophy letter that Brian wrote in his senior year. And he said, I go to church every Christmas and every Easter, but I have certain beliefs. I think that a person can live with more confidence if he has religion in which he faithfully believes in. When life gets rough, most people go to God one time in their life. This is an optimistic way of thinking. Most people who believe in God are happy. I think that a person should be able to choose his own religion regardless of his parents' beliefs. And there's a song lyric in here that really makes me think that Brian Wilson does know the Lord Jesus Christ, which is very encouraging to me. At an early live gig, my dad's lurking in the background. Their dad was the manager until 1964, when they just couldn't take him anymore, and they fired him after they got grown. Brian made over $1 million before he was old enough to vote, y'all. And this is from the back of the Surfin' Safari album, their first album, and Brian played bass guitar. He wrote all the songs on piano, but in the band he played bass guitar. And here they are at a rehearsal at the Hollywood Bowl in 1963, one of their favorite places to play. Left to right, you see that's Carl Wilson. These are the three Wilson brothers. Carl on lead guitar on the Rickenbacker, Brian Wilson on bass, and Dennis on drums. He said, I started out on stage. This is the Beach Boys live in 1964. And he had a nervous breakdown on a flight to Houston in 1964. And it was just getting too much. He was doing like 4 or 5 records a year, writing and producing them, and touring the world as well. and he had just started seeing what would be Marilyn Rovell, who would be his future wife, and he had just started smoking pot and maybe dropping acid, and the combination of the things made him have a nervous breakdown. So then he went off the road for a lot of years so he could write and produce at home, devote his time to writing and producing. Glenn Campbell was his initial replacement, but then he went on to country superstardom, and Bruce Johnston from the Little Cobras became Brian's longtime replacement and is still in the band today, even when Brian came back. In 1964, we were everywhere, including Paris. 1964 was a huge year in America for a lot of reasons. Vietnam, the Civil Rights Act, the Beatles and the Stones coming over. But it was a huge year for the Beach Boys, too. They had what I consider their best album all ever then, and most people consider the more avant-garde psychedelic album. Pet Sounds their best album, and it is mind-blowing. I love it, but it's very mellow, very mellow and like very tripping, happy hippie music. Well, I like, with the Beatles and the Beach Boys, I like the music the best, although I love all of it, I like the music the best before they got into the drugs. When it was clean rock and roll, and Mike would tell him, don't F with the formula, and the formula for the Beach Boys was girls, cars, and the beach, and Mike would say, and the reason the album was called Pet Sounds because Mike said, who's going to hear this crap? That's not the word he used, but trying to keep it G-rated for, some people in my family who get offended easily. But anyway, Mike's like, who's going to hear this crap? The ears of a dog? And so Brian, he also had his dog barking on the end of one of the songs. So the landmark Beach Boys album became Pet Sounds, but my favorite was from 1964, Shut Down Volume 2. My brother Buddy bought it on 8-track when I was 10 in the 5th grade. I already liked the Beach Boys because in the 70s we would hear them on the radio in my dad's station wagon, especially when their double greatest hits album, Endless Summer, went number one in 1974. There was like a resurgence of Beach Boys music. They started playing stadium tours with the Eagles, who were their mentors on or their proteges, on 5-part harmony. The Eagles will tell you that in a heartbeat, that's where they got their 5-part harmony, was from the Beach Boys. But anyway, so 1964, yeah, that's when Shut Down Volume 2, my favorite Beach Boys album, my favorite album ever, came out. And also that was the year of their first number one album, their concert album, their first live album. And it was the year of their first number one hit, I Get Around. So 1964 was a huge year for a lot of reasons. It's also a year the Mustang, the Chevelle, and the GTO came out. There was so many. It's one of the most significant years in American history, really, for a lot of reasons. The great Murray Wilson. This is Brian's dad, and here he is with the Gold Records. And he actually had a country song called Two-Step Sidestep on the Lawrence Welk show back in the 50s, I think, 1952. You can look it up on YouTube. This is Brian and Dennis and Mike in between. You can barely see him on the sailboat for the album, The Shoot for Summer Days and Summer Nights, 1965. Here is Brian on his little Honda motorcycle. The Beach Boys sang the song Little Honda about the Honda motorcycle, and they loved to ride motorcycles. And Dennis later progressed to Harleys. This is at the San Diego Zoo, where the photo shoot for Pet Sounds was done. And here Brian is teaching the Beach Boys their parts during the Smile Sessions in 1966. And actually he scrapped Smile and wouldn't complete it until 2004, I think, or 5. So it remained uncompleted for over 30 years. There's a photograph from Smile. And Brian Wilson at the board in 1967, mixing and producing. Photo shoot for Smile. In the pool at his Laurel Way home, which was up on the canyon overlooking L.A. Beach Boy, it says, getting ready for 15 big ones in 1976. And Brian, in addition to drugs and alcohol, he struggled with his weight and got up to over 300 pounds. And and left to right, this was about the time my dad said the Beach Boys have turned into a bunch of hippies. Left to right, we have Alan Jardine, who I met and worked gigs for in stage and sound at Mayfest, North Myrtle Beach. Dennis Wilson, the real Beach Boy right here in the overalls. Mike Love in the back, the lead singer. Dennis was a drummer. Al was a rhythm guitarist and vocalist. Brian, there's Brian. He played piano, bass, and of course wrote and composed, sang lead. And Carl had a beautiful tenor voice, and he was the lead guitarist. Here's back on tour in 1977. You can tell that wasn't a real healthy time for Brian, because here he is on tour smoking a cigarette on stage. That was common back in those days, though. Melinda and Brian getting married in 1995. She was a Cadillac salesman, and he went to buy a new Cadillac, and that's how he met her. Getting the Kennedy Center honors was one of the thrills of my life. That was really cool. I remember watching that. President Bush, George W. Bush, gave him the Kennedy Center honors, and Hootie and the Blowfish played "I Get Around," and I forget the other bands that played tributes to Brian. Out in the Town with Melinda. See how happy and healthy they are. This is a beautiful, beautiful recovery story and story of God's redemption. And here's Brian. Okay, you know, Wendy and Carney Wilson were from his first wife, Marilyn Rovell Wilson. And Wendy and Carney, of course, went on to superstardom around 1990 in Wilson Phillips with China Phillips, daughter of John Phillips and Mama Pappas. Well, they're all grown now, of course. And actually, Wendy and Carney are just a few years older than I. And but here's his new family. Him and Melinda adopted 4 kids. So isn't that cool? And isn't that just great? 4 kids that would have been orphans and not had a home. But here's a millionaire rock star who has plenty and has been blessed with plenty, and he spreads it around by adopting children. Zoo Sounds with the giraffe. Getting ready for Pet Sounds 50. I saw Pet Sounds 50 with my friend Steve Biederman and his wife Sherry at the Asheville, North Carolina Civic Center in August of 2016, and it was sensory overload. The light show, the music of Pet Sounds, all of it put together, it was mind-blowing, so beautiful, and it was almost too much to grasp. It was just so, like I said, the senses were just blown away, all of them. And here he was on the Pet Sounds tour with the giant giraffe. And my friend Biederman actually paid the big ticket price and got to meet Brian and Al and Blondie Chapin. And of course, I've met Al, like I said, but I never have got to meet Brian. Anyway, y'all, it's Brian Wilson. I am Brian Wilson, and it's a fascinating book. You won't want to put it down once you start, and it's 310 pages, I think. No, not even that. Well, if you include the credits of his discography, it's right at 300 pages. Anyway, it's a great book, y'all. I am Brian Wilson, and y'all check it out. I give it 5 stars, and I will see you in my next video. If you like my content, subscribe, and share. If you're a Beach Boys fan, I've got a few other record reviews and things like that about the Beach Boys on Little Drummer Boy 1970. So like, share, and subscribe. Love y'all. Peace. Bye.